Yeah! What is up, everybody? I am here to talk about... It is your local Ottawa fan. Oh my god, my mind is everywhere. I'm over the moon because I'm here to talk about the 3-2 shootout win. You heard that right. I said the word shootout. And then I said the word win. We won a game. It went to overtime. It went to shootout. We'd seen this story 6 times before. 6 times before Ottawa lost. Not this game. And what have I said? Maybe this is just the hockey gods being funny. Maybe it's their way of saying, but when it really, really, really matters, you'll win. And this, of any game to win, this was like the game. This was probably the most important game we've played all season. We went into this game with 1 game in hand on Boston, 2 points ahead of Boston. A win of any sort would mean all we need is a regulation win or a Boston regulation loss. We would be in the driver's seat. Boston would need to play perfectly for the rest of the season, and it still wouldn't matter if we could beat any of Montreal, New York, or Toronto in regulation. Any of those 3 games, if it's a regulation win for us, that's it. If we get 2 wins in any fashion, 2 overtime wins, that's it for us. If we get 4 points total, we could get an overtime win, 2 overtime losses. That is enough. A regulation win is enough. And if Boston loses 2 games, if they win a game in overtime and lose a game in overtime, if they do anything other than win a game in regulation and also we lose all of our games, then maybe they could lose in overtime. If they lose in regulation, it's over. We are on the brink. Now, there is the possibility. They could win in regulation, get to overtime, we never get a point again. It's theoretically possible, but we are in the driver's seat now more than ever. And we went into this game in the driver's seat. And there have been so many times this season, especially overtime losses and shootout losses, where we were in the driver's seat and we let 2 points get away from us, and now we aren't. This was actually the first time since really early on in the season, when we lost like 2 games in overtime and we were still doing well in terms of the standings, and I was just happy that we were getting points. But when regulation ended, it was the first time in a long time where I was like, you know what, I'm just happy. I'm just happy that we have a game in hand and a point in hand. Now we just gotta, win our next games. But I gotta say, that win means something. Not just in terms of how great that is for the playoff race. Not just that this knocks out New York. Mind you, New York did end up losing to Montreal, and I think they actually lost before our game ended. But regardless of the result in New York, even if New York had won that game, our win did them in. Our win was enough. There's actually 2 teams alive in the playoff race, because I think if Boston wins out and we win out and Minnesota loses out, I think there's a way that Boston could hold the tiebreaker on Minnesota. But that's neither here nor there, because we aren't focused on Minnesota. We aren't focused on Boston. We are focused on Ottawa. And Ottawa, this is a game that has been a season in the making. It's their first, not only their first win after regulation, it's their first win by 1. They have always won their games. They have 9 wins. Their other 8 games were always by 2 or more goals. Were some of them, goals in the last minute with an empty net to make it a 2-goal game, sure. But those are still 2-goal games. At the end of the day, if there was a face-off with 3 seconds left in the game, in our end, if we had won that game, it didn't matter. We knew the score. Even if they won the draw and scored, they lose by 1. Our wins were always decided. I'd say typically, in the last 30 seconds, almost all of our wins, it was pretty concrete that we won. This is the first time where the full game went, the buzzer sounded, but even in those last 5 seconds, you were still like, I don't know who won this game yet. I don't know who's won yet. Ottawa's lost some games, even regulation games, where they lost by 1. There were 2-1 losses to Minnesota, where right down to the wire, we could have tied it. We could have forced overtime, and it just never got there. And there have been a lot of games where we outshot and outplayed our opponents, and we just barely lost. We would lose in overtime or shootout. I cannot tell you in the start of the season how many times it felt like we deserved the win based off of our play. It felt like for a majority of the game, we outplayed our opponents. We had more time on attack. We had the puck more. We had more shots. We were the generally better team. And then it went to overtime and we lost, or it went to shootout and we lost. And it felt like, that one got away from us. So when people talk about how, Boston outshot us, and they did, and I think Boston even kind of outplayed us a bit, especially, and I'll get into it, in the first period, I felt they really outplayed us, and in the first half of the third period, I thought they weren't necessarily outplaying us as much as they were playing their game and we were playing their game. We were playing the kind of game that benefited Boston. It felt like they were doing a really good job of eating up big chunks of time, and they had a lead in the third period. You don't want to be losing time. And we won. And I'm not gonna hear it if people are gonna say, oh, well, maybe Boston deserved the win. We have had so many games where we deserved the win and we lost in overtime or we lost in shootout. That is the nature of the game. We got to overtime. We got to shootout. And this time, for the first time, we found a way to win. And you could tell Boston was hungry. I think Boston really knew that they were playing for their lives this game. I mean, they had to know, right? They have to know that a loss in any fashion, it makes things real great for them. It puts them in a tough situation. Their next game is against Minnesota. We have a game against New York, and we have a game against Toronto. And while that does sound scary, not only have we had Toronto's number, it's the last game of the season. There's a very good chance that by the time we get to that game, Toronto's clinched first place. Or first place has been clinched. And Toronto's playing for nothing. And they aren't going to play their starters. They aren't going to risk injury against an Ottawa team that, if we haven't clinched our playoff spot, very well might be playing for a playoff spot, winning in. And if that's the case, between New York and Toronto, Ottawa needs to want it. But it is a long journey here. But I'm trying to remember the exact number. But it was somewhere probably between Game 8 and Game 12. Game 13 even. That middle of the season, when we kept losing games by 1, when we kept losing overtime games, when we had a 5-game losing streak, when we were out of the playoffs, I think there was even a time where we were last in the standings. There were alarm bells. There was panic mode. I think I have a video called Panic Mode. I'm trying to remember every game. But if I don't have a video titled Panic Mode, I definitely said it a lot this season. Panic Mode. And then things changed. I will remember on the PWHL Ottawa subreddit, like 2 months ago maybe, a bunch of posts were talking about the draft in like February. Late February, March. Actually, more like mid-February, because there was that big IIHF break, where they were talking about who do we want to draft? Should we focus on the draft? Should we focus on next season? And I think it's a mix of, we were doing bad in the standings, and also, look at this. Look at that. Ottawa Red Blacks. Look at Ottawa Senators. I'm your local Ottawa fan, and I think as Ottawa fans, the drought has gotten to us, and we've gotten so used to our seasons as being done before we even really got a chance to start them. And now Now we are one win away from the postseason. Now we are one win away from ending a drought that started back in 2018. The Sens have not seen the postseason since 2017. The Red Blacks have not seen the postseason since 2018. It has been a while. PWHL Ottawa is in their first season. And if they win one of their remaining 3 games in regulation, or if Boston loses one of their remaining 2 games in regulation, we are going to see a postseason series in Ottawa. We are going to see a playoff game played in Ottawa. And again, I do know there are other teams, the 67s, for example. I mean, they did get eliminated in the second round, but they also did, make the playoffs and win a round. But in terms of the professional, like not semi-pro, but full-blown professional leagues, it's taken a while to get here. And it's been a long road. And we would see these winnable games slip through the cracks, and then you would think, oh man, is that going to burn us? Are those games going to burn us? And now part of you is wondering, is that going to burn Boston? Is Boston going to look back and say, why did we win in shootout if we just won in regulation against Ottawa? Oh man. And actually, we did pretty decent, but Boston did pretty decent against us. I think their record against us is 2 wins, 1 shootout win, 1 shootout loss, and I think 1 regulation loss. I think we've played them 5 times. So they've actually, I think for one, that's a winning record, and they've gotten a lot of points. They've gotten like 9 points. 9 points in 5 games is decent. But it might not be enough. We won the games we needed to win. We beat the teams we needed to beat when we needed to beat them. Remember when Montreal and Minnesota were unbeatable for us? We shut out Minnesota 4-0. We beat Montreal. We won a shootout game. These are games that we weren't winning in the first half of the season. And I don't know exactly what it was. I have some theories, obviously. I'm starting to wonder if maybe, I was a little hard on some of the... Okay, the Vanny Silva trade I like, but part of me is wondering if maybe the veteran presence is needed. D'Arcangelo made a lot of plays. She didn't get points, right? She didn't score, but she made a lot of smart plays. And that's something I noticed as a whole. We got outshot, but we did really good at corralling dangerous rebounds. We got a lot of blocked shots. Yes, Boston had dangerous chances, but we did a lot more at minimizing them. After the game, as you can see, I've gotten a lot more signatures to the point that I'm probably gonna have to make a whole video on every single signature that I've gotten. But one person who I already had a signature of, one player was Savannah Harmon. But I said to her as I was passing, you don't see it on the stat sheet all the times that you've cleared a shot from in front of the net. All the times you've cleared a shot when Boston has pressure. You don't see that on the stat sheet, but that is a difference maker that can decide if you win or if you lose a game. And I've been noticing Ottawa is doing that a lot more. Are there still some giveaways in our own end? Yes, not nearly as many as before, and there's a lot more backup now, where if we give it away, sometimes it's a free shot, it's an open net, it's a breakaway, but there's also a lot of being in the right position. We did have 1 goal today where it was a giveaway in our end, led to a breakaway in the last minute of the first, and that did give Boston their 2-1 lead that lasted for almost the rest of the game before we tied it in the latter half of the third. But the second and the third, we held them to nothing. And overtime, we held them to nothing. We closed it, and also Mashmeyer's skate came off on that breakaway, so you could argue that it was an equipment issue as well. That goal is an error. The first one was just a fluky, I think it was the first shot of the game, and just kind of had a weird bounce off of a stick, got through the 5-hole, and just barely rolled in to make it 1-0 for Boston. I guess it's time to go into the breakdown of the game. But yeah, that basically, like I said, it happened immediately. That bad, weird bounce. It's 1-0 Boston. And the first period, Boston actually, they played really well. A lot of pressure. We got a too many players penalty. And that penalty, it was looking dire. It was looking like we might be in an early 2-0 hole. We held. Again, I mean, if I had $1 for every time I said that Mashmeyer played great, I mean, I would have enough money to buy a PWHL team myself. She is amazing, and she was amazing this game. And she kind of did steal us a win in the sense of she robbed Boston a whole bunch. She robbed them a lot. But like I said, she is starting to get some help. Actually, not even certain. She's got some help now. And I'd say that she didn't have nearly the help that she had before. And it's not necessarily based off of personnel change as much as it's how we play. Just making smarter passes. Rarely do we see passes in front of our own net. You know, just those small, mistakes that you don't think about, that you think you have an open lane and you don't, or you don't see the player coming up and now, oh, boom, it goes in. No, we're making smart plays. I can't tell you how many times at the start of the season where I saw they try to just pass it back or pass it forward in our own end, and there's no one there. They're just trying to get rid of the puck because pressure's on them. An opponent is pressuring them. They've got the puck, so they just kind of clear it away, and nobody's there. It's those half seconds, those just extra, fine details of like just taking a second to check that somebody's there, or somebody seeing, there's a lot of pressure. I know that it would be, going away from my current objective of, covering who I'm supposed to cover, but like if I go, we get the puck, so it won't really matter. Just those small details that are making a world of difference. It's the difference between a 5-game losing streak and a 4-game winning streak. It's the difference between being like so upset that we had a game that we should have won and we end up losing it in overtime and we only get 1 point, and 16 points in 7 games. 7-game point streak. 5 wins in the past 7 games. 5 wins in 7 games. Just those wins alone in the 7 games is 14 points. That's excluding the other 2 losses in overtime or shootout, which actually I think they were both shootout, which adds to the streak of making it a full 16 points. 16 out of 21. It's pretty good. Our point percentage in the past 7 games, I think it's 761, I want to say. 0.761. Like really, really good point percentage. Win percentage is like 0.714 in 7 games and a 4-game win streak. These fine details are making a difference. And I'm going to be honest, the first period it was looking a little rough. Boston was playing pretty well, and I was kind of saying, there were times where I felt like we were kind of regressing to our old form, and then we got a power play. We kill off the penalty, we get a power play, and immediately, Brianne Jenner again. Jenner has been on a tear. She scores, ties it up, hat-trick last game, tying goal in the first this game, and I want to say something, because I did get on our case a little bit. The last time we faced Boston and lost in a shootout, she rang it wide. I think it was right off the post in overtime. Seconds left in overtime, wide open net, and she plain missed it. It was an open net. And then she fanned on her shot in the shootout. And ever since then, she has been, I'm going to say it, the best player in the league. Since that moment, since our shootout loss against Boston, she has been, in my opinion, without question, the best player in the league, bar none. Bar none. She has been elite. Every game, she's contributing, she's getting points, she's getting goals. She's already proven herself as captain, but like, to a casual observer, and I know this because I have, friends and family who are casual observers. They aren't a diehard Ottawa fan like me, but they tune into a game every now and again. And they're like, why is she the captain? You know, I don't see her on the points. I don't see her here. You know, and I'm like, no, she is contributing. No, Breanne Jenner showed up. You know, in the first half of the season, you know, she was contributing. She was doing pretty well. Now, yeah, no. Might be the best player in the league. Really good argument that she's the best player in the league. Now, no question as to why she's the captain. Anybody who knows puck knows Breanne Jenner, best player on the team, top 3 player in the league, honestly. When they have, you know, awards for, like, MVP, there's a very good chance Breanne Jenner might take home that award. If we make the playoffs, which is a good chance, if we do something in the playoffs, very good chance Breanne Jenner is winning an award this season. That's how good she's been. You gotta remember, she whiffed on a shootout and had a wide open net in overtime the last time we faced Boston. This time we faced Boston, she scored a pivotal tying goal. And the period did even out, but Boston got a lot of pressure and then a late penalty on us. That's not what leads to a goal, but it leads to Boston again having pressure. And the ensuing penalty, that ensuing penalty kill, Boston was peppering Maschmeyer. So many shots. Like, the shots were kind of even, and then just boom, it was like 15-8, something crazy like that. I think it was 15-8 at the end of the first. Just out of nowhere, they were just going at us, and the penalty ended, but the pressure was still there. And like I said, giveaway, Maschmeyer loses skate blade, less than a minute left in the first, it's 2-1. And at the end of the first, it felt like, okay, we're being outplayed, we're being outshot now too. And again, a few key defensive plays and goaltending bailing us out. I mean, Maschmeyer always bailing us out, but Boston was hungry. You could tell Boston is playing for their lives and they know it. And I mean, hey, we saw it against Minnesota. You know, I said we were lucky to be up by 1 after the first. You know, we got a fluky goal, but then we woke up in the second and the third. And we did enough in the first to hold Minnesota. And it was the same story here. We did enough. Yes, we were down by 1, but it wasn't out of reach. And then in the second, we woke up a lot more. Now, Boston stayed hungry throughout. There was never a time where you could just be like, yeah, no, we're starting to really completely outdo them. We're starting to really take the momentum. But you could tell that it had evened out, you know. Like the very, very, very onset of the period, and I mean like really early, like before Boston took an early penalty, I did find us playing a bit sloppy. But then after the penalty, it was after actually the power play that I thought we did well, because the first half of the power play was good. The first half was pretty good. But the second half, we just couldn't get into the zone. Boston got a clear, and we just couldn't get back in. And they killed the penalty, and then we got a phantom call. And I don't care that I'm a homer. I don't care that I obviously have an Ottawa bias. This was not tripping because her stick wasn't at the skate, which is how you trip somebody. If your stick is over here and your other player's feet are over here, you cannot physically trip them. And it was not with her feet either. Look, if there was a penalty on that play, I don't know where. We got a phantom call, and Boston gets a few good chances. And we still kill it. And we get a power play ourselves. This power play is a lot better. This power play, we got a really good chance. We got quite a few, and this was another, it reminds me of the early season of like getting open shots and it going wide. But I felt like it wasn't the same of like the goaltender is on the floor, the net is open and we hit it wide, or we don't get to the puck in time. This was a lot more of like a shot where like you could see daylight between the goalie and the net, and it goes wide, but you could tell that it was a lot faster, and it wasn't like a sure thing, and that they were trying to trick Frankel, that you need to have, you know, kind of the perfect shot right now in order to get past Frankel and into the net. And, you know, with everything going on, and also with all the deflections, it'll happen. It'll sometimes happen that you won't always hit the net. And Frankel did make a really good glove save. And Boston gets a jailbreak opportunity, and Maschmeyer stops it, just barely stops it, and it's still a 1-goal game. And you could tell, okay, finally this power play was a lot better. We were waking up. Even though this power play, we gave them a better chance, we got more momentum. We got more shots. We got more pressure. We only are behind now because, yeah, a few misses on the net and an absolute robbery. But we're starting to heat things up. We're really starting to play well. And it was a much, much rougher game, too. Like, there were a few times where the crowd was upset. Like, there were a few hits Boston delivered on us that could have been a call. But in all fairness, oh yeah, we got away with stuff too. I think after the phantom call, the refs swallowed their whistles a little bit more. And I like that because, yeah, I mean, these are competitive teams, fierce teams. And, I mean, it's battling for what very well could decide the playoffs. Boston wins this game in regulation. It's a completely different story. Yeah, we've got a game in hand. We're down a point. We win this game in any fashion, we've extended our lead. We've extended our lead just enough that a regulation lead is all we need. And you could tell that it had that playoff game environment of like, you know, let the players play. Let the players play. And the refs, they let the players play. Things got rough, but never too nasty. There was nothing that I thought was particularly dirty. Yeah, there was a hit here where you're like, oh, is that a call? But I'm going to be honest, most of the hits probably weren't calls. You know, one or two things you could have called, but I'm not complaining about the reffing. Like the Minnesota game, I'm going to admit there was a time where I was like, okay, like, come on. If you're going to call that on us, call it on them. This game, I'm going to be honest, I'm not mad about it. Yeah, there were a few times where like I could hear grumblings of like, oh, they're not going to call that. Oh, I don't know. I think we should be on the power play. I think that just comes from the nature of, you know, in a close game, yeah, you want a power play. It could decide if you make the playoffs or not. A late save by Maschmeyer. She made a lot of great saves, and we go into the third down by 1. Much better second, but still trailing. We need to kick up the intensity in the third. You know, we have improved our game a lot, but we need results. And again, have we not seen this story of we're playing better, we're playing good, we're maybe even outplaying our opponent at times, and we just aren't scoring. And then, the third period. And like I said, at first, initially actually, we had a lot of pressure for an extended period of time. But then, after that initial burst, Boston neutralizes us. And it was a lot of neutralizing is the word I'm going to use, because while Boston actually did have a lot of time on attack in the first half of the third period, they had only a few, I would say, really good chances, like only a few opportunities where I was like, oh, that nearly went in. You know, that could have been dangerous. Like there was one, it was a pass right to the side of the net that looked like it could be an easy tip in. And Maschmeyer just got the pad there, toe save, right up against the post. But for the most part, you could tell that Boston was playing it safe, where they weren't about to give us anything. It was not just about having that offensive pressure and having that, time on attack, but it was also about keeping us tired, keeping us away from the puck. We really struggled to get into their end in the first half of the third period. I could remember thinking at around the 10-minute mark, like, yeah, sure, Boston hasn't had, like, any great chances. Like, they've tested us, but, nothing that big for Maschmeyer. But we haven't had anything, except for, like, the very start of the period. Boston's probably okay with that. Boston's probably okay with winding this clock down, bringing it to zeros, and calling it a game. And then... Emily Clark with a great play. Filthy mitts to Gabby Hughes, scores, tie game, deuces each, 2-2. And not only this, we were starting to get pressure right before this goal. You could see, like, maybe 2 minutes before, we kicked it up just a notch. And that's what it took. And the rest of the period, it was both teams having chances. Now, I think part of that is Boston realizing that they can't just wind the time down. They need a good scoring chance. And like I said, our defense really tightened up, where Boston, if they don't score on their shot, there's not a great chance that they'll score on their rebound, that we'll clear it, we'll get the puck. And also a lot more of us being comfortable of just having our puck in our end and actually like, okay, let's do something. You could tell that, there was a bit more of like an intensity to just get it out of our end when we were down by 1 already. And then, we'll get a change, we'll get on offense, but first let's just hold the line, which is weird. You would think it'd actually be the opposite when you're tied, but at least how I felt from what I saw, it was the opposite. It was like, now that we are in control of our own destiny again, now that we could just bring it to 0 and still have a lead in the playoff race, now that it's tied and we don't need a goal to win the game because we could win an overtime or shootout, we just calmed down and we played our game. And I think Boston played our game. Well, kind of. I think Boston still did play their game, but I think you could tell that they were a little more jumpy, that Boston was a little more desperate, and that was reflected in how the rest of the game played out. And that's how the rest of the game played out. We went to overtime. And like I said, it was the first time in a long time I was just like, okay, thank goodness. I said to the fans beside me, you know what? For the first time, I'm okay with whatever the result is in overtime or shootout since the very beginning of the season. We have a lead. We have a lead in the playoffs. We are up by 1 with a game in hand. We control our own destiny. Yeah, a win would be nice. It's better to be up by 3 than up by 1, but we are up. We have a lead and a game in hand. That is huge. And overtime, we had a very brief moment with the puck at the start of overtime, and then Boston had it for like the first minute and a half. And it was, again, a lot of this like having it in our end, but not really testing us. You could tell that they were almost trying to like tire out our players before they would get a chance. And they would get a chance. It wouldn't be enough. Mashmeyer made a few big saves in overtime, and then we got the puck back. And it was one of the best overtimes we've played this season. And I will say this, we've gotten better every single time we've gotten into overtime. There's only one time where I would say like there was a significant drop, where like we just didn't even touch the puck, but it was a short-lived overtime. Like we didn't touch the puck. I think it was against New York. New York just had it. They took like a minute. They shot it and they scored, and we never even saw the puck. But other than that, every game we've just gotten incrementally better, and I'm okay with that, especially with the result of this game. Like I said, Emily Clark with a huge chance gets absolutely robbed back the other way. Boston breakaway, huge chance. Mashmeyer with the pad save underneath the pad, which I gotta say that's huge because Mashmeyer was down, and this is one of the few times where like, yeah, there was no one there for a rebound. If it bounced off of her pad, I think Boston has a very good chance of still having a pretty open net and sealing it. But not only is it saved with her pad, it's under her pad, and the play is called. And both sides with good chances, but we go to shootout. And Mrazova, off of being injured, first game back from injury, first shot of the shootout, scores 1-0. Okay, that's pretty good. Brandt scores 1 apiece. Oh no, well, I've seen this story before. I believe our second shooter, I want to say, was Jinsey Rose. I'm trying to remember the name, all the shooters, because I think Boston had a few who shot twice. Rose with a miss. Oh, man, I should have looked up all the shooters before this, but I like I said, I'm still electric from the game. But I believe it went Brandt with a miss. Basically, the next 6 shooters miss. And like I said, Jenner did have a shot here. And I'm going to be honest, I liked it a lot more than the previous one. First off, she didn't fan on it. She actually shot. It was towards the body, but it was a good play. Like, you could tell that she stick handled it, that she had a really good chance at faking out the goalie. And again, I was upset with who was and wasn't in our shootout lineup. Now, first off, and I want to say I do think that maybe this is a curse that has been thrust upon Boston now. When Lexi Agia scores to effectively keep your season alive against New York, and you got to remember, if they don't win that game in regulation, even if they win it in shootout, they're down 4 against us. Now, any points does them in. So, any kind of win for us. If it wasn't for Lexi Agia last game, they probably don't even, they're probably fighting for their lives tonight. Not just in now they're, down to the wire. No, a literal, if you lose this game, you are out of the playoffs. And Lexi Agia scored the game winner. This was her first game back in Ottawa. By the way, Lexi, she got I don't know if it was a standing ovation. I stood up when they said welcome back to Lexi. I think it's the first PWHL welcome back, PWHL Ottawa welcome back in history. And I can't think of a player more deserving than Lexi Agia. She was not in Boston's shootout lineup, and I'm just going to say it. That's why they lost. She was not in Boston's shootout lineup, and she literally comes to your team, immediately keeps your season alive, and practically buries New York, and you don't even put her in your shootout lineup? Come on. And I said when she didn't shoot for us, and when other players who were consistently getting points, consistently getting goals, weren't in the lineup, and this was before Jenner really went on a tear in terms of goal scoring, I was like, I know she's the captain, but we couldn't fit in Agia. We couldn't fit in... I think I did complain about Mrazova, and I think I even said, play her twice, which I'll get to that. Jenner, yeah, no doubt about it. She's got to be in our shootout lineup all the time. Carla, you know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. I'm just a fan. You're the coach. And this time, yeah, she shows up, good shot, doesn't go in, but save made, so it's fine. And we go in a shot 5. So now it's effectively just sudden death as it gets. And it's Mrazova again. And she skates, goal, Katarina Mrazova. Miss Hillary Knight, it's over. Off the post, and Katarina Mrazova, 2 goals in the shootout to win, to seal our first ever 1-goal win, our first ever overtime or shootout win. And now we're 1 regulation win away. And I mean, Maschmeyer fully deserves credit for this win. Another 30 save night for her. And actually, I think it was more than 30. I think she faced 33 shots and saved 31, if I'm not mistaken. Coming off of a 35 save shutout, that is really impressive. That is, 66 saves on 68 shots in 2 games? That's pretty good, especially considering how little time was in between those 2 games. Just a monster performance by Monster Mash. Great full effort to the end. A lot of adversity this game against a very hungry, very desperate Boston team. This time we faced the adversity and we won. And now it's just down to get a win in regulation. Montreal, New York, Toronto. Or have Boston lose in regulation. I think it's Minnesota, New York for them. We have an opportunity to clinch the playoffs at home on Saturday against Montreal. We are going to have opportunities 2 more times, technically 4 if you include the Boston games, who also play us on Saturday. We could win in overtime, Boston could lose in overtime. And I think, we could win in overtime. And I think, if Boston loses in overtime, that'd be enough. I got to check my math. But all this to say, we're this close now. We stayed with it, not just this game, but this season. And now we're at the precipice. I feel like this was a long-winded video, longer than normal. So I'm going to end it here. But the excitement is building. One more. And as always, go, Ottawa, go!